Hello, everybody. How is it going in this post-election world?
Yeah, Amber, you've been busy, and I'm out here in LA covering the Konak case. So that's been really interesting and fun and somewhat frustrating. But anyway, it's nice to get out of the pouring rain and be in the beautiful sunshine with palm trees.
You tell us about what's gone on with the case. I want to hear what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, it got accelerated. We found out accelerated that it happened the day before we arrived. We were supposed to arrive next week. That's when it was scheduled, and then somebody said, "Well, wait a minute. They moved it up to Friday." So everybody made all their arrangements to come on Friday, and then we found out, no, Friday the court is closed. That was some mistake, and it's really on Thursday. And then when we got there on Thursday, after driving, I drove 16 hours from Portland, and
Woo!
Dave came down from nearly Canada. So he drove nearly the entire, length of the U.S. to get to that court. And that's pretty amazing. It was a long drive. But when we did arrive and we got up early and we went to court, the case had already been heard on Wednesday. And we did not get that word in time, sadly. But it showed up that it was supposed to be still on Thursday. So we had our stations, and there was some confusion between his name and the division it was in. So we had some people on one door, some people at the other door, some people at the bond door. So we had enough people. There was 5 of us to cover all the places and kind of do what we needed to do to figure out where to be where we needed to be. And we finally learned a few things. They did call everyone who was supposed to be in that. We found the right courtroom, and we had to stand in a big long line to get in and tell them who we were. And at that point, when we told them what case we were there, they said, "Well, you stand aside over here and we'll talk to you later." And after it was all done, we found out that the case had been heard the day before. So, and they couldn't tell us too much about it, except that it had been accelerated. And they didn't even explain that was dismissed, but Rick had got the paperwork. So we did know that it had been dismissed with prejudice. And I have always wondered what that term meant. And what it means is that the court dismisses the case, but they reserve the right to reopen it at any time within a year. And so since the word was accelerated that was used by the DA, that meant that they've put a bigger team on it. They've added cybersecurity experts, and they added a sort of interface with the public. A new person was put in that we had to contact her by email. And we hadn't heard back yesterday, so I don't know. But I think she does have a press release, and maybe we do have access to her through email. They're all working away from home still. All the offices, a lot of offices, people don't really work in them anymore. They're just kind of empty. And but the good news in LA was all the people weren't wearing masks. All the signs say they're required, but then it'll be kind of crossed out and say optional. And nobody pretty much was wearing masks. So I was really happy to hear that, because I think LA had really tight restrictions. So that we were very happy. Nobody's asked us for vaccine passports or anything. And even in Portland, we have to wear masks in the courts and the hospitals. So that was interesting. So anyway, we will find out more money on Monday. We ordered paperwork, the entire complete paperwork, and we took pictures of all the screens, and I sent some to John. We could take pictures of the screens, but they weren't up to date with that last court case yet. So we don't have the actual paperwork, but we will. George is arriving today, and that's why I only have the first hour. We got to go pick him up. And he'll be here probably on Monday. And Rick is here in LA, so he can get what we need and find out who picked up the money or if it was picked up and what those actual proceedings were, whatever the notes are. You have to go to the courthouse to get them. You can't just call and ask or get an electronic copy. And Harry explained every court is different about that. So anyway, it means that there's a bigger team. It's been accelerated. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but I think it means they're, doing more investigations and it's still possible. But on the same token, he can leave the country. So I don't know. How can you have a court case if with no defendant? I don't know what that would happen for trial. So we'll see what happens. It's still ongoing. It isn't dead.
And also, Carol, you said that there was a sheriff that was giving you some good information.
Well,
what is that, the sheriff of like LA, or what kind of sheriff is he?
Well, the guys who you had to line up behind were wearing brown uniforms with patches on their arm that said Sheriff's Department.
Yeah,
So
they're the sheriff's deputies.
The sheriff deputies, yeah. So that's why I called him the sheriff, because it said he was a sheriff on his arm.
It's the same difference. They appreciate that, and the sheriff doesn't get annoyed by that.
Yeah, I guess they're marshals or something, and apparently that's how the courts are run. It's a county. He was charged by LA County because the contract that they're saying he embezzled was with LA County. So it's the people of LA County versus Wu from Connect is what the court case is.
What I found out about sheriffs versus police are on the streets. They do a lot of the arrests. The sheriffs manage the courtrooms, and they also manage the jail. And they manage the prisoner from the jail to the courtroom. But also, if there's emergencies, like here, you'll have Georgia State Patrol, like those speed racers that go and they end up killing people that are just driving on the interstate because they're racing and being crazy. And so when our APD, which is Atlanta Police Department, their numbers are down, they need to be in the neighborhoods where there's lots of vehicle larcenies and issues happening. They can't be on the interstate because the county switches, it goes from Atlanta to Sandy Springs to Coffee. So it's all over the place. So Georgia State Patrol steps in. And sometimes when Georgia State Patrol needs to be everywhere because the street racers may be in different parts or there may be other issues, that's when the sheriff's department can actually lend their hand. Now they'll switch off and some will ride in some vehicles because I think Georgia State Patrol or the State Patrol actually has the right and the maneuvers and the training to take out someone who's being dangerous on an interstate so they don't hurt other people while this is going on. And yet local police, not everyone is trained in taking a car and doing a pit maneuver to move them out of the way. Same with the sheriff's department, but they need that extra hand. So sheriff's department and police departments work well together, and sheriff's departments and state patrols work well together. And I think it's just the way that because the sheriff department isn't really on the streets making the arrest, they're there to assist, to transport and to do things like that. And I didn't know that for the longest time. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, that makes sense why if you were going to debilitate a city, you would defund the police. And then the sheriff is just the person who transports this, and you really couldn't defund the sheriff. So that's why people were going after it that route. Because if you defund the police, no one's getting arrested. If no one's getting arrested, the sheriff is doing nothing.
Well, that's sure happening. There's a lot of people aren't getting arrested. Yeah. In fact, I was noticing, I think I talked it in another show, the street racing I was hearing it a little bit at Hawthorne, but boy, you will hear it a lot here in the wee hours of the morning. There's loud street racing in the middle of LA. We're right by the courthouse, we're right in the middle of the city. So
on Sundays here, there's a baseball field down the street. And it becomes this big barbecue. People sell local jewelry, but then also all the people driving Chargers and the loud muffler cars. I mean, it's just packed. And they even hire an off-duty officer to make sure that there's parking space. But when they're leaving, I mean, it's like a raceway. and it's really obnoxious. It drives my dog crazy. But they've stopped racing as much, so we haven't had a lot of wrecks.
Oh, that's good.
It's noise issues. So they break the noise ordinance, but it's usually from revving, not speeding. So they're just sitting around, and
this sounded like drag racing.
And I just think if women were to start saying "real impressive" and ignoring it, the boys would stop doing it. Really, I mean, once women were just like, "Ew, that's so tacky," the guys will stop. I mean, so women start saying it's tacky. Do your job, ladies. Do your job.
Well, I do think that time of day does matter because, you know, I'm a very audio person. And there are things that wouldn't bother me during the day, but like, you know, trying in the middle of the night or sometimes in the wee hours, it might be like, what the heck is going on?
It's annoying. It's very annoying because once you're out of REM sleep or once you're woken up, it's hard for me. It's hard to go back to sleep. And, you know, I just think it's rude. Like it lacks so much etiquette and decorum. Just drive through the middle of a neighborhood. Don't care if the kids go to school the next morning. Don't care who has to get up to go to work. 3 a.m. Rev through like everybody wants to hear the bass and everybody wants to hear the vroom vroom. No one's impressed. It makes it seem like you're not endowed. And so you have to prove yourself otherwise. I mean, it's just really got to that point where I'm very negative about how not impressive it really is.
Yeah. I think I meant cities, you know, or open spaces.
Yeah.
Well, Amber, I know you've been working on some similar election issues. I wanted to give a little bit of background of this case and how it kind of relates to what you're working on too. You've been working really hard there. But what this background of the case is for maybe people that don't know is that this company, Connect, which was started by two Chinese people, one of which was living in China. They started it in China, and originally, I think it had a different name in China. It wasn't exactly the same, and it's kind of changed name, but the same two people were very involved originally in setting up elections for the CCP. And maybe it was just on phone and tablets, because that I'm not sure if it back in the day when they set it up a few years ago, if it was the whole thing or just that part of it. But what they've done in the U.S. is focused on to come into a city or a county, I guess it's all counties, and set up the overseas part of the elections. The people that are out of the country can vote by tablet or phone. And since it's a tablet or phone, you don't have as much oversight. And I think in some locations, and LA, the stuff went, there's IP traffic of a lot of information that was particularly the pollsters. I'm kind of confused because the overseas ones is different, and Michigan, the states have different contracts. But anyway, the contract was that no information would go out of the country. It was written in the LA contract with this company, and then clearly a lot of information went to China. Their servers are in China, and there was stuff back and forth, whether it was the actual votes or whether it was the information of the pollsters. I'm not sure. I think in Michigan it was the pollsters, and here it was the overseas. It may have been more voting information. I'm not positive about what the information was, but that's the problem. I think your issue was a little bit more the overseers, the nonpartisan observers, and that they maybe weren't all U.S. citizens necessarily. I don't know exactly, but this is supposed to be local oversight.
Right. Well, the bigger issue, and it started years ago, and how globalism sneaks in, is one country goes to help another country's elections, and then it becomes a fad. And then everyone's software can be located somewhere else to help someone with their elections, because everybody's friends. And we all just want to have a multipolar world where we're all together. But, we have our individuality, but we share software, which is not showing sovereignty and is very dangerous. So like the guy, Scott Leondecker, he's the one who invented the poll pad, which was no ink. It's the software that goes on our poll pad. And our government really loved what he did. And so his software, no ink, actually helped do the first election in Kosovo. Well, when you start a trend that way, and then you have organizations like the Carter Center, who in fact has helped countries that had zero democracy, and it was going to get crazy and wild and warsome, go in and say, this is how we do it. This is how we lay it out. It's a different arena when you're bringing in technology, not just hand-dipped ink and a ballot that you sign, but actual software that can be dipped into or hacked into and maneuvered. And so when you've got no ink doing it, and then you've got Kosovo saying, oh, thanks for the help, then it just makes sense to people that there would be these two guys that have this company over in China that, they're just doing software and they're going to help our elections. And that's really the problem.
Yeah,
because you get but then you've got the same Carter Center who jumps in and says, we've got to be there to help. But there's no way that Carter Center can help when technology is going. They're used to doing paper ballots, hand dip, like literal on the scene where you can see it. You cannot tangibly see how stuff is moving on an internet to a server and so on and so forth. You cannot see it. You're not going to understand it, no matter how diligent you are with your clipboard. And I ran into it. What?
I was just going to say, you'd mentioned the defund the police thing, and then who comes in to help us? The UN, because we have these treaties. The treaties say if you can't police yourself, then people that you've helped police, like Somalia or wherever, they can come help you. And so that's we're getting into that same kind of thinking, or moving into this globalism idea of having non-local people come in and do things that we've always done locally and we want to do locally and makes sense. I mean, the whole localization of the police and getting people out in the neighborhoods and getting to know each other, that made a lot of sense. But bringing people from wherever, far, far away, to come in and be the police people who don't know you, and they may end up, they're young, they've got weapons, they don't understand that kids can be crazy here and we don't want to shoot them. Right. It's
what I noticed
is the same thing with elections now.
So what's always frustrating to me is if I read something on the computer or I'm researching it, I still don't know until I put my feet on the ground. And so this last election day, there were tons of people I was supporting, but I chose one, and I was like, what I'm going to do is, after checking on the precincts and doing what citizens sign up to do, okay, you're poll watching, you're seeing if everything's going as planned. 1:00 hits. Okay, you're free. Now let's see what else there is to do. Well, with one of the candidates, I went to every precinct in one area. That was Buckhead. And midday. And I got the midday scanner count number. Why is that important? Because you can see if it was heavy that morning. And then you can see in the middle of the day if there was a mad rush at the end, but you make sure you get someone to check the scanner ballot, the scanner total vote of that precinct at the end of the day. Now, they don't have to be with the same campaign. They can be one of your friends who supports someone totally different than you, that you would not that you didn't vote for. However, it's about getting the number of people who've come through that day. And then you're able to see, wait, all of these stayed consistent. And there was no line here. They said they saw no line, and it was dead at 3:15 in the afternoon. But between 3:15 and at 3:15, they only had 237 votes that came in through that day, through that gym to vote. But by the end of the day, they had 1,280. and the person came in at 6:30, even though it closes at 7, and they were at 1,280, but they sat in the parking lot an hour beforehand, and they never saw more than one person voting at a time. So when did that group of people come in, and how is that possible? So that's where you see weird anomalies, if there are any. The 11 precincts that I went to, there was just one that stood out and seemed odd, but then you narrow it down and you're able to check addresses when you go on the Secretary of State's website later, and you're able to see who voted in that precinct, like who went to that precinct, because there's 2 areas that Secretary of State's or recorder's offices do. They will either do early voting. That'll be early by absentee ballot or early going into the precinct. That's in one clump. The other clump is same day voting. So you're able to go on the same day voting, and then you can look to see what addresses came up, to see if there was a dump of just addresses that don't make sense, or if it was, and when they came in, because you can look at the timestamp as well. So they're in different recorder's office and Secretary of State's office. So that's the way that citizens can actually figure this stuff out, especially because sometimes people are screaming, something's not right, and it is. And you're thrown into a tizzy, and wait, that's not the big deal. The big deal's over here. So to familiarize yourself and understand what goes on the ground, then whenever I first heard about Connect, I was like, this is like knowing. This is like so many other software systems, Seidel, and all these other things that people are throwing around. That's because everybody is helping everybody else with their elections. And now there's no way to really pinpoint who is doing it to be mischievous, get our data, use it to benefit their country and harm another country, or if they're just doing it purely for economic sakes and making money and getting contracts, right? And so when there's too many questions, then everyone's like, get rid of this and get rid of that. And everyone starts throwing everything out, and the baby, the bathwater, and the existence of a bathtub at that point. And then it causes chaos. And then our government marches in, like, a bunch of knights that are just shutting everyone down, and everyone is in turmoil because of the dysfunction, because of the breaking of the rules, because of the mixing of things that we should not be doing. And then we who go to investigate it are looked at as the boogeyman, when actually citizens should be looking at the really conflict of interest that's happening all around us. And we really need to be able to decipher between conflict of interest and just human dip crappery. I was going to say another word, but really, there's just human mistakes. I slept too long. I'm here 30 minutes early. People are screaming at me. I got to get the machines warmed up. That kind of just idiocracy. Not enough people signed up to work at this precinct because we kept it in a closed knit thing, because we're telling everybody we don't trust people in here. And then we shoot ourselves in the foot because everyone we trusted, only half of them showed up that day. So there's that ignorance that happens, but then there's malfeasance, and then there's purposeful shenanigans. And we as individuals, it's our constitutional republic. We need to be able to decipher it, understand it, grasp it, and point people that are being charged emotionally to just run every which way, to narrow the field and to actually look at what we do need to notice as an anomaly or an issue.
And also too, I'm wondering.
We're still fighting the word salad. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tara.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that I just wonder if the U trial was moved around on purpose because, scoop it under the rug with the elections stuff, and so that it doesn't get too much attention.
Well, that's a thought,
Yes,
and that
I
was
think
our
so.
thought at the court. But Harry felt really positive about it. He said they're expanding their reach. But the way it was reported was, that the election deniers made it look political. And I think it's really really important that we reverse that language. So
Yes.
election deniers aren't conspiracy theorists. We're citizen journalists, and we want free and fair elections. And we are both partisans and all partisans right here that are asking for that. We're not, one side, that the other side has to counteract. And that was a little bit of my fear in the way the stories were worded from the New York Times. And there was another one that Addie had reported too, that had that same kind of, we have to make sure that the political stuff isn't part of it. And it did feel a little bit like the people we talked to shut us down a little bit at some point when they went upstairs. It felt like that, but Harry was real positive. So I'm real happy. He said, well, I would have done the same thing if I was a DA. So,
well, I'll
there
say
are things about the court that I just am not familiar with.
Carol, Tara, one way to reverse that language.
Those words are important.
Yeah, reversing that language. If you reverse it, what you need to remind people is that that's called gaslighting. That's literally narcissism 101. When somebody says that your concern and something that you've noticed that is shenanigans, it's not up and up, it's not on the board, there's a major issue, that is called gaslighting. And it is what narcissists do. And unless someone wants to be a narcissist and carry that label, they need to stop telling other people what their intentions are and making them feel crazy. If I hear that a polling station or a precinct doesn't have but one scanner, the other one's broke, they're telling people to just fill it out or wait in line for 2 hours, and they're mocking anybody there, don't gaslight me and call me a denier. Fix your stuff. And someone who would call that person a denier, rather than turning to that precinct and saying, why don't you have your stuff together? There were 2 weeks of early voting. You've had plenty of time to get this ready, and you are dysfunctional at best, and none of you need to be running a precinct because you are an embarrassment. That's how everyone, no matter who you're voting for, should respond. But instead, they are narcissistic to the core to turn to somebody who notices that is unacceptable on the day of voting. And we should not be dealing with this, especially like with the technology that we have and what we're able to do when they really want to, how they find someone, how they figure something out, to gaslight normal people who are on their lunch break, who need to go and vote and may not be able to come back because they got to pick up their kid and they've got other things to do. And then someone's calling them a denier. Excuse me, narcissist. You need to go to a counselor. You have lots of mental problems to then decide that, well, it's advantageous for you to gaslight somebody else. And I think we really need to call people what they're being, because gaslighting is not okay.
No, it's not okay. But I think if they call us names and we call them names, I think we want to take the high road and say, no, we're not going to go with your language, and we're not going to just throw it back at you. We're going to be, we need the truth. That's what this whole system was designed to do, was to give us some sense of fairness, that we all had a voice.
Right.
And that's how we protect our nest, by demanding that.
If I'm doing something and I'm unaware that what I'm doing is this particular characteristic of a particular personality type, and I'm doing it so freely and so confidently, I need someone to say, you do know that that's what narcissists do. Like, that is 101. You tell someone they're crazy because they're experiencing something that you're telling them they're not experiencing. So if I'm cold because you lower the air conditioning and I'm freezing and I say it's colder in here than it was, and you say, I'm not cold. No, it's not. What's wrong with you? But you're leaving out the fact that it is colder, that you did turn down the air conditioning. And because you're fine with it, you're trying to make me crazy. You need to understand you are acting as a narcissist. That is the definition. Don't try to make me crazy. Just say, I turned down the air. Or yes, I see there's a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Truth deniers. They're truth deniers.
I'm not.
Yeah, we don't. Right. That's good. I think turning the language back and say, well, if we're election deniers, we want the truth. And are you denying that?
Yeah, but the truth is they're being narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's my problem, is like, people now won't listen when you tell them in a kind way, because they're too busy barking, and then they just like skip over you. And so for me, I'm like,
triggering things, though. Then they just trigger, and then everybody's triggered. To have someone diagnose you when they're not a
Oh,
doctor.
I'm not diagnosing them. I'm reminding them that that's what narcissists do.
That's the definition. So don't do it. You're right. I mean, that's true, but I think it can still get, instead of opening them up, it can shut them down. So
behavior, though.
That's
You can say this is narcissistic behavior, not saying, a good way to do it is say you aren't this, but you're acting like it.
You're acting like that.
Yeah, this is behavior, but that's not you.
Yeah, not
where
a
did that
label.
come from?
I like
right?
that.
Yeah, and it came from watching mainstream media. And then they wonder, why do we have so many citizen journalists? And then the cocky part is they want to make fun of people who want to discuss these things, but they're bought off by corporations and they themselves can't even say what they want to say. And then in the same breath, they're going to make fun of other people who have the freedom to say what they want to say. And so they're just jealous. They're jealous because they're told on a screen what they can and can't say. And they have to go to sleep at night knowing that somebody in a corporation that's worried about their bottom line and their shareholders is telling them what can come out of their mouth. So I'm sorry that that's what you chose. And I'm sorry that you're really miserable because you can't really say what you want to say, but don't be throwing stones at somebody who is free to do that. And don't make fun of people who seek out the truth and who's actually looking to be able to have real conversations because they're not corporate entities, or government shills. So that's my
a real important point, because I think corporate entities now have standing in the court as being people, and also organizations have standing in the court, but who has less standing in the court are actual people, that we, the people, without a voice, our standing is being removed. So that's another squirrely thing that's been happening under the covers without the light of day. We have to shine the light of day on that and
they're taking advantage of our kindness. That's what I've been feeling lately is I've been bending over backwards for the last at least 5 years and just trying to understand, being patient, being kind, and only talking to my friends like, rah, and getting really feisty and spicy about it because I feel like I'm bottling too much in, and that's not good for me, because when I go out in the world, I'm having to be Pollyanna pure heart. I'm having to mimic some, Mother Teresa times 550 to make sure everybody's comfortable. While I'm totally uncomfortable. And I feel like my skin is burning off because I can't say that because this might happen. I can't say that. And they're taking advantage of that. And that's my bigger issue is it's one thing for me to be kind because you're stressed out. It's another thing when you know that you're shutting me down because I'm kind enough to shut down for you and you're manipulating the situation to shut me down. No, that's manipulation. And it's not because you're doing it out of the necessity or out of your own stress mechanism. And then I'm being patient with you because you're human. It's because I'm a kind person and you're running roughshod over me. And then I'm allowing it. At some point, I'm an ignorant buffoon for not being a little bit more stern, And so I'm not being demeaning, and I'm not being demonstratively this is that. No, and I haven't lost friends by pointing in their face and doing all this. But I'm not going to back down when they go, well, why did you not put on your mask when you went into the commissioner's hall? Because the mask mandate is gone. That's why. I'm not going to go, oh, well, I forgot it. And then there was only a few in the box and I didn't want somebody who really needed it not to have it. And I'm almost done anyway. Sorry. I'm not doing that. No, because the mandate's over.
Or you're not saying, listen, I'm not a slave and you can't muzzle me. So just back it up.
I'm not going to the extremes, but I'm also not going to be super quiet. I'm not going to, bend over backwards for people who are demanding that I do it. It's one thing when you need it. You can sense that in a person. Yeah. They need your patience. They need your kindness. And then when someone is totally exploiting your kindness, at some point, I'm beginning to discern the exploitation of who I am versus the need for me to be patient and kind. And so that's been a new growth thing.
Well, yeah. One thing that if you go back one, John, the one you just showed, it showed that, on the day that the court was supposed to happen, November 10th, that it was still on the docket. And even though the court case had already happened on the 9th, it was not in the records. And that means that we weren't, that this was done in the dark from the people. So that is one of those squirrely things that we really need to try to point out. Why did this happen? What's wrong with this picture? That it was scheduled for the 10th. We made great effort to get there, and we weren't told. So there's something wrong with something. It just makes me wonder. It has to.
And
but
so,
we
Carol,
will find out what happened.
you said they were going to give you some paperwork on Monday? Does Harry trust
on Monday we'll find out what happened, but being there and hearing it and hearing what goes on in court, all we get is a little teeny slip that says this is actually what happened, and that's important, and it really gives us some of the picture, but not as much of the picture as we made a big effort to be there to get the clarity of being there, and we didn't get that because they made the change at the very, very last second. And why was that? Was it because something else happened that was unavoidable? They sped it up. They wanted to speed it up. Did they speed it up for their own reasons, or did they want less clarity? I don't know. That's what we need to make sure.
I think that's been my frustration. That's been my frustration is I don't trust anymore like I used to. And I think that's detrimental. So if I worked for the government, or I worked in some of these areas, which I'm having to put, a heavy foot down or tell people they need to calm down, I would really worry about how they see me, and if they're fearful because they know that there's been a lot of lies told, and that I represent something that deep down they question, can I actually trust that they're not selling our country down the road? Can I actually trust that they're not bought and paid for, and they're only working for a few people and not the actual citizens, even though my tax dollars go there? Like, if that's deep down in your heart and you want to trust and you want to believe that they have your best interest, and that you may not understand the difficult picture, and you just need to do your part and really stay alert and actually, just work, enjoy your family, and they've got this, then that'd be great. But I'm derelict in my duty as a mother and as a wife when I've watched many in this country tell me to sit down as cities burned. I'm sorry, I don't understand how I'm supposed to protect my children and be on alert while I'm told, if you see something, say something. Well, if my eyes are closed and I'm enjoying myself, I'm not going to see anything. And so there's mixed messages, and I just have this feeling that I want to trust. I want to be able to sit down and relax and enjoy something with my family and not worry about, I got to sit in the back of the theater. I got to make sure of this. I need to make sure that I already have my gas tank topped off because they're talking about this on this channel, this over here. And I feel like I'm running from one crisis to another, and the government is telling me not to feel like I'm in a crisis, but they're not shutting up the people who are telling me everything's a big crisis. So it's like they're playing a part in telling me it's none of my business and to shut up and to calm down. But then they're allowing those who they will get onto you if you point out to tell me the opposite. So the government says, sit down, we've got this. And then everyone else that they're protecting, if I question, they'll come and say, Miss Connor, you can't do that. Those people are telling me something opposite than my government. So I'm not understanding why two forces that are saying two opposite things are telling me to calm down, when that in itself and the basis of it causes distrust. And I have to do my due diligence as a parent. I have to do my due diligence as a wife. I can't just tap out, have a glass of wine, and call it a day. And they're doing this to people all over the United States, and then mocking the fact that, those pearl clutchers, just calm down. Okay, but if I'm calmed down, you're going to say nobody's doing their job. Like, we need your help. If you don't like this, you're going to have to stand up, and people are going to have to talk and let people know. Like, what do you want? What do you actually want? You're giving mixed signals. Like, that's not appropriate, nor is it responsible to do. And so, it's just, it feels like abuse at this point. Psychological abuse.
I think you kind of said it, just about, there's a reason why people are so intimidated about someone that they know and care about sharing something that's going to be, potentially life-changing, because I have some chickens talking here. But, it's because you're super effective, Amber, because they don't like that.
Well, they have to get used to it, because as we evolve, we learn how to talk better, and then as we realize, see, that's the thing about liars. When you're lied to,
Mhm.
what happens is you grow a distrust, and then you start to look for the truth, because you know that your foundation is like quicksand when you're dealing with their words. So then you go to find more. You first of all, you find dirt, then you find firm ground like red Georgia clay, then you find more of an asphalt that's a little bouncy, then you find concrete, and then they're annoyed because you sought out concrete because you didn't want to sink into the quicksand that they were feeding you. Well, that's their fault because they decided to lie. And that's really my issue. You've got to evolve, but don't evolve like that, because that's too hard for us, and so we're going to shut you down. That's too much. It's psychological abuse. That's not okay. It's absolutely unacceptable, and I'm not going to accept it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear blah blah blah.
It's a great point. I think it's really hard to lie. It's hard to keep things straight. And that's been our advantage with the internet, really, is that the truth bubbles out, because you just can't keep all those complex loose ends all tied up. There's just enough back ends in there to read the NIH papers or whatever. You can find it out somehow or other. And it's easier to speak from your heart, because the words just come out. If you have to double think, oh, now can I say this? I don't know how people do that. I just can't even understand. But that is, I think, a spiritual evolution, is you realize telling lies is a waste of time, and it makes you go crazy, and it's not worth it.
Right.
Eventually that's the point. That's the lesson there. It doesn't get you where you want to go. So
it feels like psychological abuse when someone says, you're going to have to not be tuned out, Netflix and chill. You're going to have to be a participant in this. And then you participate. Oh, no, you need to sit down. Excuse me. That's called psychological abuse. You cannot tell me to walk to the left. I start to, then you tell me, no. Why are you doing that? You need to walk to the right. That's torture. That's sadistic. And I'm going to call it what it is. If they don't want it to be that, then they need to get their crap together and stop giving mixed messages, because that's what's causing all this division and all this trouble. And if they're letting a small little group of people do it because they're beholden unto them, whether it be blackmail or whether it be non-disclosure agreements or whether it be because it benefits their monetary existence or their stock portfolio, it doesn't matter to me. Like, you're the shill. I'm not. Don't shut me up. I've got questions. Answer my questions or get out of my way.
Well, I think that, one of the things Carol, when you mentioned, whoever's doing the paperwork, the long hours, they never expected us to do things without getting paid. That's the thing. They just expect, this model, where only people that are going to get this much are going to even lift a finger. And there's so many people that have a passion, they have intellect, they have an ability that, whether they like it or not, the intelligences are getting transferred to non-truth deniers, non-reality deniers, people that are willing to look at things from all kinds of angles, be willing to change their mind when they get new information, and not beholden to any scumbag corporate, fake entity.
Well, remember what we're dealing with. Like, so many people have been abused in their position when they've worked for corporations or the military. And at the same time, they can't come out because they could lose their house. They could lose their paycheck. Why? Because of a money exchange. Because I'm doing this job. Well, it's better if people are trying to get the truth out or even find the truth if there is no money exchange. Because we have to speak up, because we don't have that threat of, okay, my boss is going to fire me because I'm asking this question, or because I don't want to get this medical intervention, or this, I don't want to be mandated to do this, where I could lose my pension. I could lose my house. My kid may not be able to finish the private school that they're in. We may not be able to have groceries. My wife is just like, be quiet. Let's just get through it. You've got 5 more years to retirement. I know so many people going through that. So I'll speak for them. I'll eat beans and rice if I have to. I'll shop at a thrift store if I need to. But I'll speak for them, because there's no reason why we should be psychologically abused by anyone in this system and then call us the free world. Give me a break. I better see a free world. I'm not seeing it, and I better start seeing it.
Well,
what I love to say is there is no algorithm for courage. And I don't remember what the source of that is, but I think that's why we're beating the AI right now, is because that's not mathematical. It doesn't, or it's not motivations that they can program in. They can't understand it. So that's a huge advantage. And that's right. Stop on a dime, change your mind. You're working kind of on a quantum level where all possibilities exist, and then it collapses into one reality, and that's truth. So that's what's happening. I may have to leave any minute.
Did Tara's video cut off?
Oh, she's gone.
Yeah, but she's come back.
Okay.
Oh, here she is.
Hi, sorry about that. I just got excited about what Carol was saying, and
the chickens started jumping for joy and knocked your camera down.
You know what's funny about the chickens? I'll just give you an update, because you guys were with us in June when we got the chickens. Well, they just laid their first egg.
Yay!
2 days ago. So chickens.
In the winter, I thought they stopped.
They take a little longer with the short days, but they came through.
Nice.
10 ladies.
So how many,
Yeah.
so it takes them a couple of years to start to, or it takes them a little while to start to lay eggs. How many with the chickens
20,
you have? About 20
20 to 24 weeks.
Okay. And then how many do you predict you usually get a day?
I think with the winter, it is definitely going to be slower than the other season, but we got 1 on the first day and then 2 on the second day. And I think they were the 2 different ones, because we have 2 different kinds, because one was browner and the other ones were kind of white. So I don't really know, because I'm new to the whole thing.
It's exciting. Let us know, because I've heard people say they get between like 5 and 6 a day, to up to, depending on how many chickens they get, to then sometimes it'll skip a couple days, and then you'll go in there and you're like, whoa, like here's a dozen. Like I just checked this yesterday. What in the world? So I'm excited to hear about your journey, your chicken journey.
Yay! Thank you. I know I was going to show them surrounding me, but that's all right. You guys heard them.
I told you about that live show. It's on YouTube. It's called Chicken City. And you can play it for your chickens, and it could be their soap opera. It's like their soap opera.
Well, yeah, I think so. Carol, you're off to, what do you have to do?
Well, yeah, it looks like we may need to meet a plane arrival. So I didn't have the full time to be on the show. So I may have to leave. I still can't quite determine where we're going and when, but I think a decision may have been reached. I was trying to figure that out. So I might have to sign off here, and we're headed out for other things. I did want to say, though, that we did another thing yesterday besides go to the court that was very, very interesting that I'll mention. I sent John some pictures, but we went to the Kavli Institute at Caltech, which was the nanoscience one. There are 20 of these institutes all over the world. The Kavli Foundation is kind of an aggregator of funds that passes out the grants. It's a grant-making institution, and it gives money for brain science, nanoscience, astrophysics, space nanosets and optics and all that sort of stuff. So we, and it gives out lots of money of our taxes from DARPA, ARPA, IARPA, NIH, NFS. And it's kind of where the ball is going. It's the money, the big money. It used to be bio nano, and bio and nano are both included in this, but it's kind of space and connections to the earth and the people on the earth specifically. So it was really kind of wonderful to go there and poke around. And I took a lot of pictures of what their technology is. They have all these posters on the wall. It's 6 floors of this building, mostly all labs. And there's bulletin boards with all their posters. So I took a lot of pictures. I don't think I got all of them. Hi, chickens. Hi, lovely ladies. There they are.
They're so cute.
So I'll be doing a little more deep dive into that stuff as we go forward. And so there's more in LA. There's all kinds of stuff going on here in the deep underbelly of all sorts of stuff. So
make sure you go to a few good restaurants. Make sure you go to a few good restaurants.
We went to an Armenian restaurant. We went to an Armenian restaurant yesterday, and that was really interesting because it was very much like Lebanese. There was falafels. I'm a vegetarian, so I was happy with that. But what they did have are these pickled turnips that look like French fries and are dyed with beets, and they were delicious. And that was the thing that made it Armenian. Everything, and they had a special thing that was a little bit like tzatziki, but it was more like a garlic mayonnaise, not aioli. It was this olive oil and garlic kind of whipped into a white.
Was it good?
It was delicious.
Oh,
so so I'd never been to an Armenian restaurant, and that was really fun. It was just like a little, kind of fast food, but it was all handmade by the grandmas in the back. And
turnips are really good with other root vegetables.
Yeah, there's more options in LA.
Yeah. Turnips are really good with other root vegetables and olive oil, because like if you do like the red potatoes, shallots, parsnips, carrots, turnips, and fennel, the fennel root, and you cut it up because fennel tastes a little like licorice, and you add olive oil and salt and pepper and bake it. It's a roasted root vegetable. It's a roasted root vegetable, and it's literally one of the favorite Thanksgiving dishes that we bring to we go to 3 different family Thanksgivings, and roasted root vegetables is what we bring. And it's so good. Top it off with rosemary. It's amazing.
I want to eat some of your cooking, Amber, sometime.
It tastes like fall. The roasted root vegetables. It's sometimes I'll add butternut squash, but and that's not a root vegetable. But literally it's like you're eating fall. It's like literally you're in the harvest, eating the harvest, and you feel like you're one big brightly colored leaf as you're eating it. Like I couldn't describe fall more so than eating roasted root vegetables. It's like,
they are beautiful. I love that.
Because the colors in the dish are amazing.
Yeah, they look like fall. We had a great conversation eating the Armenian food about our favorite cabbage recipes, our little Osprey group. So that was fun. Yeah. Well, I think I'm gonna sign off because there's stuff going on. So
all right. Well, I think that we
sign off.
Before we go, though, I just want to give a shout out to our veterans. Thank you, veterans. Thank you so much for all your sacrifices. Thank you for everything that you've done. We love you all. Wes, especially Wes, mwah, and just everyone. I don't want to start. He'll represent everyone for now because I don't want to start rambling names. But anyways, thank you so much. And thank you for a wonderful show. Carol, have a great rest of the time in LA. And we'll see you next time.
Sarah, I would like, if you would rattle off names, I would like to rattle off my family really quick as a Veterans Day. So we have a lot of military in my family. My husband was a Marine. His grandfather, James Eakes, was in the Army. My grandfather, George Harold Yop, was in the Navy. My other grandfather, Pop Vernon Higgins was in the Navy. My Uncle Ed Spiller, who was kin to the Higgins, was in the Navy. Uncle Gene Sims, kin to the Higgins, was in the Navy. Great Aunt Margaret Yop, my Pampa Yop, she was in the Air Force for 32 years. Uncle Robert Eakes, which is my husband's grandfather, was in the Army. His great uncle Kenneth Connor was in the Army. Uncle Glenn Connor was in the Army. Uncle Warren Connor was in the Air Force. Jerome A. Connor, granddaddy, was civilian defense. Uncle Shelby, which is on my mom's side, her uncle, my great uncle, Uncle Shelby Gorman was in the Army. Uncle William Etheridge was in the Army. Uncle Paul Joyner was on my grandmother's side. Her twin sister's husband was in the Army. My great grandfather, Charlie Christopher Yop, was in the Army. My great uncle, J.L. Yop, was in the Army. My great uncle, Bird Yop, was in the Army. My great uncle, Raymond Yop, was in the Air Force. My great uncle, Bill Yop, was in the Army. My great uncle, Robert Yop, was in the Army. My great uncle, Russell, was in the Air Force. And my great uncle, Dole, was in the Air Force. There's others that we're still looking into, but those are the ones I actually met and I knew. Not the ones that have passed on that I'm still looking up their information. But when duty called, they came, and this is why I take it so seriously when we decide to go to war, and it's not wise. When we treat our veterans really horrible, when they come back in pieces, when they're asked to do missions for corporations that are raping resources rather than doing it for the safety and security of America at the right time. And so I think it's very wrong when we're dealing with looking back at our veterans to allow for a small group of people to tell us that our veterans are the pawns and all they do is serve a purpose, when the actual purpose is they're citizens of America that actually want to stand up and protect everyone's family and that they really give a damn. And we should understand that we should take that seriously. We should love them, and we should actually make sure that we stand up for them when they have to be quiet and march off to a war that we know is by false premise. And I think that we should do our due diligence. And when war is wise, okay. But when it's not, I'll speak out every time.
Well, we see where you get that fighting spirit, Amber.
That's right. But there's one more thing that just happened. I think it was maybe this morning or yesterday that Harry reported on, that the UN is now in charge of the Pentagon, and they sent out a press release to that effect. So that changes everything, really, in terms of who are you serving and why. So that's just a reminder. Thank all our vets from the U.S. service that have worked hard and been tricked many times. That's what really makes me sick about the whole thing. And the trickery is getting worse. It's not getting better. So time for a shift.
Well, hopefully to their end, So anyway, salute to all those.
Yes. And the George will be doing a book signing near Chinatown on Sunday on noon. So if anybody's watching this from LA and wants to come, contact John, according to Kathy, and you'll get the details. So I will say it out loud. Come say hi if you're here and get your book signed. Bring them with you because he doesn't have a bunch of stacks of them.
Okay. And have a beautiful weekend, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Over and out.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Linda, tell me if you can hear me. If you can hear. Oh. Can you hear this audio? Okay, thanks. I'm gonna put up I think you've seen this before, but you remember when when Peter Duke asked George, how's it going? And George said, oh man, Peter, it's tough. They've thrown everything they can throw at me except the kitchen sink. Well, right after he said that, who walks in with a kitchen sink at Twitter but Elon Musk? Let's see if this works. I'm trying different configurations of equipment here. So there's Elon carrying George's kitchen sink. What kind of infection? Is he in the hospital? Well, I hope it's not too serious. Oh man, that's terrible. Oh, my heart goes out to him. How are they going to cure it? Well, for right now, I'm working with my my cell phone. Here is the okay. I've got to go. Please give family and friends my phone number and email. I'm looking for new show ideas. This is an all hands on deck situation. We need to do some strategy, some serious strategy and tactics. Sunday night, I'm going to have a strategy and tactics meeting. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for supporting the show. And I will be sending you an email with a database of all our shows because YouTube took down the index. The show still exists, but YouTube will not give you the display of the index. Take good care. Be good. Tell your husband I'm praying for him.